Harold Wilson sat in his big office on the top floor of a tall building in the city. The sun was setting, making the room glow orange. Harold was 72 years old with white hair and wrinkles on his face. He wore an expensive suit that cost more than what most people make in a month. On his desk sat many pictures of buildings he owned, but no pictures of family. Harold looked at the paper in his hands again. It was a report from a man he had paid to find someone. The report had an address and a photo of a young woman with brown hair. The woman in the photo looked a lot like someone Harold used to know. She had the same green eyes and small nose. Harold's hands shook a little as he put the paper down. "Mr. Wilson, your car is ready," said his assistant from the doorway. "Are you sure you want to go alone? It's not a good part of town." Harold stood up slowly. "Yes, Thomas. I need to do this alone. This is personal." 20 years ago, Harold's only daughter, Sarah, had walked out of his life. She was angry at him for missing her school plays, her birthdays, and her graduation. Harold had always been too busy making money and building his business. He thought he was doing the right thing by making sure she would always have enough money. But Sarah wanted a father, not a bank account. The last time they spoke, Sarah had shouted at him, "All you care about is your money. You don't know how to love anyone." Then she had left and never contacted him again. Harold had tried to find her for years, but stopped when his private detective told him Sarah had asked to be left alone. Now Sarah was gone forever. Harold had found out 3 weeks ago that she had died from cancer 5 years earlier. The news broke his heart. But the detective had also found something else. Sarah had a daughter. Harold had a grandchild who was now 25 years old. Her name was Emma. Harold's expensive car moved through the city. The buildings got smaller and less nice as they drove. Finally, they entered an area with old trailer homes lined up in rows. Some had flowers and small gardens, trying to make the place look nicer. Others had broken windows covered with plastic. "We're here, sir," said the driver, stopping in front of the address on the paper. Harold looked out the window at the small trailer home. It was old and the white paint was peeling off. There was some attempt to make it look nice with a small pot of flowers by the steps. A dim light came from inside. "Wait here," Harold told his driver. He got out of the car, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel. He felt out of place in his expensive suit. Some neighbors looked at him with curiosity from their windows. Harold's heart beat fast as he walked to the door. What would he say to this young woman? Would she even talk to him? Did she know about him? Did Sarah tell her what a terrible father he had been? He stood in front of the door for a full minute, trying to find his courage. Finally, he raised his hand and knocked 3 times. The sound seemed very loud in the quiet evening. Harold waited, holding his breath. He heard movement inside, then footsteps coming closer to the door. The door opened slowly, and there she was. Emma had her mother's eyes, the same eyes that had looked at Harold with anger the last time he saw Sarah. But Emma's eyes showed only confusion as she looked at the old man in the expensive suit standing at her door. "Can I help you?" she asked. Harold tried to speak but found his voice caught in his throat. After all these years of being a tough businessman who could talk his way through any deal, he now couldn't find any words. Finally, he managed to say, "My name is Harold Wilson. I believe I'm your grandfather." Emma's eyes went wide with shock, and Harold knew at that moment that his life would never be the same again. For a long moment, Emma just stared at Harold. Her green eyes, so much like her mother's, moved over his face as if searching for something. Harold stood very still, afraid that any sudden move might make her close the door. "My grandfather," Emma finally said. Her voice was quiet but not angry. "Mom told me you were dead." Harold felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Sarah had told her daughter he was dead. The pain must have shown on his face because Emma's expression softened a little. "I guess we have a lot to talk about," she said. After another moment, she stepped back. "You might as well come in." The inside of the trailer was small but very clean. Harold had to duck his head to enter. The living room had an old couch with a blanket covering worn spots. A small TV sat on a wooden crate. The kitchen area was tiny, with just enough room for a small stove and fridge. "I don't have any fancy drinks," Emma said. "Just water or coffee." "Water is fine," Harold said. His throat felt dry. He sat down carefully on the edge of the couch. It sank under his weight more than he expected. Emma brought 2 glasses of water and sat in a chair across from him. She wore jeans with a small hole in one knee and a plain blue t-shirt. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Even in these simple clothes, Harold could see how beautiful she was. She looked so much like Sarah at that age that it made his heart hurt. "Why are you here now?" Emma asked. "How did you find me?" Harold took a sip of water before answering. "I hired someone to find your mother. I wanted to make things right between us, but he found out that he couldn't finish the sentence. That she died." Emma finished for him. "5 years ago." Harold nodded, feeling tears form in his eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know until 3 weeks ago. The detective also told me about you. I had no idea I had a granddaughter." Emma's face was hard to read. She didn't seem angry, but she wasn't happy either. "Mom never talked much about you, just that her father was dead to her. I always thought she meant you had actually died." "We had a big fight," Harold said. "She left and didn't want me to contact her. I tried for years, but she made it clear she wanted nothing to do with me. Eventually, I stopped trying." He looked down at his hands. "That was my biggest mistake." Emma was quiet for a long time. Harold noticed a sketchbook on the table next to her. Some pencils lay beside it. "Do you draw?" he asked, trying to learn something about his granddaughter. "I paint," Emma said. She seemed surprised by his question. "Nothing fancy. Just a hobby." For the first time, Harold looked more carefully around the small trailer. In the dim light, he hadn't noticed at first, but now he saw paintings hanging on the walls. They were beautiful landscapes and city scenes, full of color and feeling. "Did you make these?" he asked, amazed. Emma nodded. "Like I said, just a hobby." "They're very good," Harold said honestly. He stood up slowly to look at one painting closer. It showed a sunset over city buildings. The sky was full of orange and red colors that seemed to glow on the canvas. "This is really beautiful." "That's the view from the hospital where Mom spent her last days," Emma said quietly. "I painted it for her." Harold felt his heart break a little more. He had missed so much. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," he said, "for either of you." Emma looked at him for a long moment. Her face softened just a bit. "Are you hungry?" she finally asked. "I was about to make some dinner. It's nothing fancy, just spaghetti." Harold knew this was an offer to stay longer, to talk more. It was a small opening, but it was more than he had hoped for. "Spaghetti sounds perfect," he said. As Emma moved to the tiny kitchen area, Harold watched her. He had come here not knowing what to expect. He had been prepared for her to slam the door in his face. Instead, she was making him dinner. It was a start. Outside, the sky grew dark as night fell. In the trailer park, lights came on in windows. Inside trailer number 17, 2 strangers who were family began the slow process of getting to know each other. The smell of cooking pasta filled the small trailer. Harold sat at the tiny table, watching Emma stir the spaghetti sauce. Her movements were quick and sure. She clearly knew her way around the small kitchen. "Can I help with anything?" Harold asked, feeling strange just sitting there. Emma looked over her shoulder. "You can set the table if you want. Plates are in that cabinet." Harold stood up and opened the cabinet she pointed to. Inside were 4 mismatched plates. He took 2 out and placed them on the table. Then he found forks in a drawer. The silverware was also mismatched, some with plastic handles, others plain metal. "Do you live here alone?" Harold asked as he set the table. Emma nodded. "For the past 5 years. Mom and I moved here when she got sick. It was all we could afford after the medical bills started piling up. Harold felt a wave of guilt wash over him. If he had known, he could have helped. Sarah and Emma would never have had to worry about money. "What do you do for work?" he asked. "I have 2 jobs," Emma said, draining the pasta in a small sink. "During the day, I work at a coffee shop downtown. 3 nights a week, I'm a security guard at a warehouse." "And you still find time to paint," Harold said, glancing at the beautiful artwork on the walls. Emma shrugged. "I paint when I can, usually early mornings before work." She put the pasta on the plates and added sauce on top. The meal was simple but smelled good. "It's not much," she said, almost apologizing. "It looks delicious," Harold said honestly. He couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for him. His chef at home prepared his meals, but it wasn't the same as having someone cook just for him. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Harold noticed that despite the cheapness of the plates and forks, Emma had set out paper napkins folded neatly. She had made an effort for this unexpected dinner guest. "Tell me about my mother," Emma said suddenly. "What was she like when she was young?" Harold was surprised by the question. He put down his fork and thought for a moment. "Sarah was always full of energy," he said, smiling at the memory. "Even as a little girl, she was always moving, always busy. She loved to draw, just like you. And she was kind. She once spent her whole allowance to buy food for a stray cat." Emma smiled, the first real smile Harold had seen from her. "She was still like that, always helping others, even when we didn't have much ourselves." "She also had a stubborn streak," Harold added with a small laugh. "Once she made up her mind about something, nothing could change it." "I got that from her," Emma admitted. "Mom always said I was just as hard-headed as she was." They continued eating, the silence now more comfortable between them. Harold looked around the small trailer again. Despite its size and age, Emma had made it into a real home. There were small touches everywhere: a vase of wildflowers on a shelf, colorful curtains at the windows, and of course, the beautiful paintings. "Did you go to art school?" Harold asked, nodding toward one of the paintings. Emma's face changed. A shadow seemed to cross it. "I started. I was in my 2nd year when Mom got sick. I had to drop out to take care of her and to work." "I'm sorry," Harold said softly. "That must have been hard." Emma nodded but didn't say more about it. She stood up and took their empty plates to the sink. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked over her shoulder. "Yes, please," Harold said. He watched as she made coffee in a small old coffee maker. The machine made loud gurgling sounds, as if it was working extra hard. "So," Emma said as she put a mug of coffee in front of him, "now you found me. What happens next?" It was a good question. Harold hadn't thought beyond finding her. He had spent weeks gathering his courage to come here, but he hadn't planned what would happen after. "I'd like to get to know you," he said simply. "If you'll let me. I've missed so much of your life already." Emma wrapped her hands around her own coffee mug. Her eyes studied Harold's face for a long moment. "I'm not looking for a handout," she said firmly. "If that's what you're thinking." "That's not why I'm here," Harold said quickly. "I just want a chance to be your grandfather. That's all." Emma took a sip of her coffee, thinking. Outside, a dog barked somewhere in the distance. The old trailer creaked as a breeze blew against it. "We can start with coffee," Emma finally said. "Next week, same time." It wasn't much, but to Harold, it felt like winning the lottery all over again. 1 week later, Harold's car pulled up to the trailer park again. This time, he had his driver park a little farther away. He didn't want the fancy car to make Emma uncomfortable. He carried a small paper bag as he walked to her trailer. Emma opened the door before he could knock. She wore jeans and a simple green shirt that matched her eyes. Her hair was down today, falling around her shoulders. "Right on time," she said with a small smile. Harold held up the paper bag. I brought some coffee beans. I hope that's okay. Emma took the bag and looked inside. These are nice, but you didn't have to bring anything. I wanted to, Harold said. It's just coffee. Inside the trailer, Harold sat at the small table while Emma made coffee with the beans he brought. The smell filled the small space. Harold noticed a new painting on the wall that wasn't there last week. It showed a small boat on a lake at sunrise. Is that new? He asked, pointing to the painting. Emma nodded. I finished it yesterday. She didn't say more about it as she poured the coffee into 2 mugs. They sat across from each other, sipping their coffee. Harold noticed Emma seemed more relaxed this time. Maybe she had gotten used to the idea of having a grandfather. I've been thinking about what you told me, Emma said after a while. About Mom and how she was as a kid. Do you have any pictures? Harold's face lit up. Yes, I do. I brought some. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small photo album. These are copies. I thought you might like to have them. Emma's eyes widened as she took the album. She opened it carefully. The first picture showed a young girl of about 7 with pigtails, smiling at the camera. She was missing a front tooth. That's Mom, Emma asked softly. Harold nodded, his throat tight with emotion. That was her first day of 2nd grade. Emma turned the pages slowly. Each photo showed Sarah at different ages. There was Sarah on a bike, at the beach, opening Christmas presents. Harold watched Emma's face as she looked at each picture. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I don't have many pictures of her as a kid, Emma said. Most of our photos were lost when we had to move quickly one time. The landlord threw out our stuff before we could get it all. She looked up at Harold. Thank you for these. Harold felt a lump in his throat. You're welcome. They talked for the next hour about the photos. Harold told stories about each one. He told Emma about the time Sarah broke her arm falling from a tree, and how she insisted on climbing the same tree as soon as her cast came off. He told her about Sarah's first school play, where she forgot all her lines but made up new ones that were better than the real script. She sounds amazing, Emma said, closing the album after looking at each photo twice. She was, Harold agreed. Then he added softly, I wish I had been a better father to her. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Mom was stubborn, but she was also fair. If you had tried to make things right, I think she would have let you. The words stung, but Harold knew they were true. I was stubborn too, and proud. Too proud to beg for her forgiveness, when that's exactly what I should have done. Emma got up to refill their coffee cups. When she came back, she said, Tell me about your life. What do you do? Harold was surprised by the question. I own a real estate company. We build and manage properties all over the city. So you're rich, Emma said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Harold said honestly. I have more money than I could ever spend. He looked around the small trailer. But sitting here with you, sharing coffee and stories about your mother, this is worth more than any money I have. Emma studied his face, as if trying to decide if he was being honest. Then she smiled a little. Well, your coffee beans are definitely better than the cheap stuff I usually buy. Harold laughed, and after a moment, Emma joined in. The sound of their laughter filled the small trailer. It was a good sound, Harold thought. A sound of connection. Next week, Emma asked as Harold got ready to leave. I'll be here, Harold promised. Same time. As he walked back to his car, Harold felt lighter than he had in years. He had a granddaughter. And slowly, step by step, they were building a relationship. The visits continued every week. Harold looked forward to Wednesday afternoons more than anything else in his life. Each time, he learned something new about Emma. She loved the color blue. She hated mushrooms. She had a cat named Paint who sometimes visited but mostly lived wild in the trailer park. On the 5th visit, Harold arrived to find Emma looking tired. Dark circles showed under her eyes. Her smile was weak when she opened the door. Are you okay? Harold asked as he stepped inside. Emma nodded. Just tired. I worked a double shift at the coffee shop yesterday, then had to cover for someone at the warehouse last night. Harold frowned. That sounds like too much. Emma shrugged. I need the money. The trailer roof is leaking again, and I can't afford to fix it. Harold looked up at the ceiling. He could see where water had stained it in one corner. He wanted to offer money right then, but he knew Emma would say no. She was too proud, just like her mother. Can I at least look at it? Harold asked. I know a bit about roofs. Emma seemed surprised. You do? Harold smiled. I didn't always own a big company. I started as a builder. I worked on houses for 10 years before I bought my first property. I didn't know that, Emma said, her eyes widening a little. There's a lot you don't know about me yet, Harold said, just like there's a lot I don't know about you. Emma got him a ladder from her neighbor, and Harold climbed up to look at the roof. It was worse than he thought. Water had damaged the wood underneath the metal. It would need real work, not just a patch. When he came down, Emma was waiting with a glass of water. How bad is it? She asked. Harold didn't want to worry her. It needs work, but it's not an emergency. I could help you fix it next week if you want. Emma studied his face. You don't have to do that. I want to, Harold said. I'm still pretty good with my hands. They went back inside to have their coffee. Emma seemed to be thinking about something as she sipped her drink. I saw the article about you, she said suddenly. Harold froze with his cup halfway to his mouth. What article? In the business magazine, Emma said. It was at the coffee shop. Your picture was on the cover. Harold Wilson, the man who built half the city. Harold put his cup down slowly. Oh, that article. It said you're worth over $100 million, Emma said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were intense. Is that true? Harold nodded. He didn't know what else to say. And you offered to fix my roof yourself, Emma said. Her voice was strange, like she couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable, Harold said. I know you don't want my money. It's not about the money, Emma said. It's about, she paused, looking for the right words. It's about not wanting to be a charity case. I've taken care of myself since Mom died. I don't need saving. I never thought you did, Harold said honestly. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, just like your mother. Emma looked down at her coffee. But it's stupid to turn down help when I need it, isn't it? Mom always said pride was her biggest flaw. And mine, Harold said. Maybe it runs in the family. They sat in silence for a few minutes, both thinking. I have an idea, Emma said finally. A compromise. Harold raised his eyebrows. I'm listening. Emma pointed to the painting of the boat on the lake. I could paint something for you. For your office or home. In exchange for the roof repair. Harold smiled. That sounds fair. You can hire someone good to fix the roof, Emma added. But I'll paint something worth the same amount. Harold knew that a proper roof repair would cost thousands, and Emma's paintings, though beautiful, probably didn't sell for that much yet. But he also knew this was important to her dignity. It's a deal, he said, extending his hand. Emma took it, her small hand firm in his. Deal. For the first time, Harold felt like they had truly connected, not just as people getting to know each other, but as family helping family. 3 days later, the roof repair crew came to Emma's trailer. Harold had picked the best company in town, but he made sure they came in plain trucks with no fancy logos. He didn't want the neighbors to gossip about Emma getting special treatment. Emma watched from her small porch as the workers climbed on her roof. She looked nervous, like she still wasn't sure about accepting help. Harold stood next to her, trying to hide his smile. It felt good to be able to do something useful for his granddaughter. They'll be done by tomorrow, Harold said. They're putting on a whole new roof, not just fixing the leak. Emma turned to look at him. That seems like a lot more than we agreed. I can't paint something worth that much. Harold shook his head. Good roofs last 20 years. So your painting only needs to be worth 1/20th of the roof. Emma laughed. That's not how it works. It is to me, Harold said with a smile. After watching the workers for a while, Emma invited Harold inside. The hammering was loud, but they could still talk. Emma made tea instead of coffee this time. I started your painting, she said, pointing to a canvas on a small easel in the corner. Harold could see the beginnings of a city skyline. It looks good already, Harold said. Emma seemed hesitant about something. She kept looking at Harold, then away. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, I have an art show next week. Harold was surprised. You do? Where? It's at a small gallery downtown. They're showing work from local artists, Emma explained. I applied months ago and didn't think I'd get in. But they called yesterday and said someone dropped out, so they have space for 3 of my paintings. That's wonderful, Harold said, truly happy for her. Congratulations. Emma smiled, looking both proud and nervous. It's nothing big, just a small show. It's a start, Harold said. Every artist has to start somewhere. Emma played with her teacup, turning it around in her hands. I was wondering, would you like to come? It's next Friday at 7 p.m. Harold felt his heart swell with joy. This was the first time Emma had invited him to be part of her life outside their weekly visits. I would be honored, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'll be there. Emma seemed relieved. Great. It's at the Green Street Gallery. Nothing fancy. They talked a bit more about the show. Emma was showing 3 of her paintings of city scenes. She seemed both excited and scared about people seeing her work. When it was time for Harold to leave, he paused at the door. Emma, I've been thinking. Would you consider letting me help with something else? Something that's important. Emma looked wary. What is it? Your art school, Harold said. Would you consider going back? Finishing your degree? Emma's face closed off immediately. I told you, I don't want handouts. It's not a handout, Harold said quickly. Consider it a loan. You can pay me back when you're a famous artist. Emma shook her head. I can't. I have to work to pay the bills. What if you could work less? Maybe just the coffee shop job, not the night security. That would give you more time to paint. Emma looked torn. Harold could see she wanted to say yes, but her pride was holding her back. Think about it, Harold said gently. No pressure, just an offer from a grandfather to his granddaughter. As Harold walked to his car, he heard Emma call after him. He turned around to see her standing in the doorway of her trailer. I'll think about it, she called. And Harold? Yes. Thank you. For the roof. Harold smiled all the way home. The roof was just the beginning. He had plans, big plans, to help Emma achieve her dreams, but he knew he had to be patient. Emma needed to accept his help in her own time, in her own way. That night, for the first time in years, Harold added a new photo to the small collection on his desk, a picture he had secretly taken of one of Emma's paintings. It was a small thing, but it made his big empty house feel less lonely. The night of the art show, Harold arrived at the Green Street Gallery 30 minutes early. He wanted to see Emma's paintings before the crowds came. He wore a simple suit, not his most expensive one. He didn't want to stand out too much. The gallery was small but nice, with white walls and bright lights. Harold looked around until he saw Emma's name on a small card on the wall. Next to it hung 3 paintings of city scenes. Harold stood in front of them, amazed by the talent of his granddaughter. The first painting showed a busy street corner at sunset, with people hurrying home from work. The second was of an old brick building with fire escapes zigzagging down its side. But it was the third painting that took Harold's breath away. It showed the view from his office window, the city skyline he saw every day. Emma must have painted it from memory after he described it to her during one of their talks. What do you think? Emma's voice came from behind him. Harold turned to see his granddaughter looking more dressed up than he had ever seen her, She wore a simple blue dress and had her hair up. She looked nervous but excited. "They're beautiful," Harold said honestly, "especially this one." He pointed to the skyline. Emma smiled. "I thought you might like that one." More people began to arrive. Harold stepped back to let others see the paintings. He watched as people stopped to look at Emma's work. Many of them smiled or nodded in approval. One man in a black turtleneck spent a long time looking at all three paintings. "That's the gallery owner," Emma whispered to Harold. "Mr. Jenkins." After a while, Mr. Jenkins came over to speak with Emma. Harold moved away to give them privacy, but he could still hear parts of their conversation. The gallery owner seemed impressed with Emma's work. He asked about her training and her plans for the future. "I'd like to do a larger collection of city scenes," Emma told him. "Maybe 10 or 12 paintings showing different parts of town at different times of day." "That sounds interesting," Mr. Jenkins said. "If you complete such a collection, I'd be interested in seeing it. Perhaps we could discuss a small show of your work alone." Emma's face lit up. "Really? That would be amazing." After Mr. Jenkins moved on to speak with other artists, Emma hurried back to Harold, her eyes bright with excitement. "Did you hear that?" she asked. "He's interested in my work." "Of course he is," Harold said. "Your paintings are wonderful." As the evening went on, more and more people stopped to look at Emma's paintings. One woman even asked if the skyline painting was for sale. Emma looked surprised and said yes. Harold watched proudly as Emma wrote "sold" on a small red sticker and placed it next to the painting. "My first sale at a real gallery," Emma said, her voice full of wonder. Near the end of the show, Harold noticed a young man talking to Emma. The man was about Emma's age, with glasses and a friendly smile. They seemed to know each other well. After a few minutes, Emma brought him over to meet Harold. "This is my friend Jake," Emma said. "He works at the coffee shop with me. Jake, this is my grandfather, Harold." It was the first time Emma had called him grandfather to someone else. Harold felt a lump in his throat as he shook Jake's hand. "Nice to meet you, sir," Jake said. "Emma's paintings are the best ones here." "I agree," Harold said with a smile. As they talked, Harold learned that Jake was also an artist. He made sculptures from metal. He seemed like a nice young man, and Harold could tell that Emma liked him a lot. When the show ended, Emma had sold all three of her paintings. She couldn't stop smiling as they walked out of the gallery together. "This was the best night," she said happily. "Thank you for coming." "I wouldn't have missed it," Harold said. As they stood on the sidewalk, Emma suddenly turned to Harold. "I've been thinking about your offer, about art school." Harold tried not to look too eager. "And I think I'd like to go back," Emma said. "But I want to pay you back, every penny." Harold nodded, his heart full of joy. "Whatever you want. We can work out the details." The night air was cool, but Harold felt warm inside. His granddaughter was going to get the chance she deserved, and he was going to be there to see it happen. 6 months passed quickly. Emma went back to art school, taking evening classes so she could still work part-time at the coffee shop. She moved to a small apartment closer to the school. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and safe, with good light for painting. Harold had offered to pay for something nicer, but Emma insisted on a place she could afford to pay half the rent for. Harold visited her new apartment for the first time on a sunny Saturday. Emma had invited him for lunch. When she opened the door, Harold was amazed by the change in his granddaughter. She looked healthier, with color in her cheeks and a brightness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Welcome to my new home," Emma said with a smile, letting him in. The apartment was small but filled with light from big windows. Paintings covered the walls, some Emma's work, some by other artists she admired. An easel stood by the window with a half-finished painting on it. "This is nice," Harold said, looking around. "Very nice." "It's perfect for me," Emma said. "And I can sleep without worrying about the roof leaking when it rains." They laughed, remembering the old trailer. Emma had sold it to a young couple who were fixing it up themselves. Emma had made a simple lunch of sandwiches and soup. As they ate at her small kitchen table, she told Harold about her classes and her new friends at school. "My painting teacher says I have a unique style," she said proudly. "He thinks I should try to get more work in galleries." "That's wonderful," Harold said. "Mr. Jenkins from the Green Street Gallery asked about you last week." "He did?" Emma looked surprised. Harold nodded. "I ran into him at a charity event. He remembered your work and asked if you were still painting city scenes." "I am," Emma said. "In fact, I've finished 8 paintings for that collection I told him about." She pointed to several canvases stacked against one wall. After lunch, Emma showed Harold her work. The paintings were even better than the ones he had seen at the gallery show. Each one showed a different part of the city in a different light. One showed a park at dawn, another the train station at noon, another the river at sunset. "These are amazing," Harold said truthfully. "You've grown so much as an artist." Emma's cheeks turned pink at the praise. "Thanks. I've been working hard." Harold noticed a photo on Emma's small desk. It showed Emma with her mother, both smiling at the camera. Next to it was a newer photo, Emma and Harold at her art show. "I have something for you," Emma said suddenly. She went to the closet and pulled out a large wrapped package. "It's to say thank you for everything." Harold carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a painting, but not a city scene. This one showed the old trailer, but not as it had been. Emma had painted it the way it might have been, surrounded by flowers, with her mother sitting on the steps, smiling. It was both happy and sad, a memory and a wish combined. "Emma," Harold said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't have words." "Mom would have liked you," Emma said softly. "The you that you are now. The grandfather who fixes roofs and goes to art shows." Harold looked at the painting again, at Sarah's face looking out at him. He hoped she would have forgiven him, given time. "I have news," Emma said, bringing Harold back to the present. "I've been offered a job teaching art to children on Saturday mornings at the community center. It doesn't pay much, but it's a start." "That's wonderful," Harold said. "You'll be a great teacher." "And," Emma hesitated, then smiled, "Jake asked me to go on a real date, not just coffee after work." Harold chuckled. "I was wondering when he would get the courage to ask you." They talked until late afternoon. As Harold got ready to leave, Emma hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she said, "for believing in me." Harold hugged her back, thinking of how much his life had changed since that first visit to the trailer. He had gone looking for his granddaughter, but he had found so much more. A second chance at family, at love, at being the man he should have been all along. 1 year had passed since Harold first knocked on Emma's trailer door. So much had changed in that year. Today was a special day, the opening of Emma's first solo art show at the Green Street Gallery. Harold stood in front of the gallery, looking at the large poster in the window with Emma's name on it. Inside, the gallery was crowded with people. Emma's 12 paintings of the city hung on the walls, each one with a small light shining on it. Harold felt proud as he watched people stopping to look at each painting, nodding, and talking about the work. Emma stood in the center of the room, talking to an older couple who seemed interested in one of her paintings. She wore a simple but elegant blue dress, the same color as the dress she had worn to her first show. Her hair was pulled back, and she looked confident as she spoke about her work. Harold stayed back, not wanting to interrupt. He watched as Emma shook hands with the couple. They smiled, and a gallery worker placed a red "sold" sticker next to the painting they had been looking at. That was the 3rd painting sold in just the first hour of the show. "Your granddaughter is very talented," said a voice beside Harold. It was Mr. Jenkins, the gallery owner. "She has a bright future ahead of her." "Yes, she does," Harold agreed with a smile. Mr. Jenkins looked around the crowded room. "We've had more people attend this opening than any other new artist show this year. And she's already sold 3 pieces." "I'm not surprised," Harold said. Her work speaks to people. Across the room, Emma caught his eye and smiled. She excused herself from the people she was talking to and walked over to Harold. "You came," she said, hugging him. "I wouldn't miss it for anything," Harold replied. Emma looked around the gallery, her eyes shining. "Can you believe this? My own show." "I can believe it," Harold said. "You've worked hard for this." They walked together around the gallery, looking at the paintings. Each one told a story about the city, about life, about people. Harold had watched Emma create these paintings over the past year, sometimes working late into the night. "Oh, I almost forgot to tell you," Emma said excitedly. "The art school offered me a teaching position for next year. Just part-time, but it's a start." "That's wonderful news," Harold said. "You'll be an excellent teacher." Emma smiled. "And I already saved enough to pay back the first part of my school loan to you. I should have a check for you next month." Harold shook his head. "I have a better idea. Instead of paying me back directly, how about you start a scholarship fund for other art students who need help? We can both put money into it." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? You'd do that?" "Of course," Harold said. "It would help other young artists like you." Tears filled Emma's eyes. "That's a wonderful idea. Thank you." Just then, Jake appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to Emma and one to Harold. "To the artist of the hour," Jake said, raising his own glass in a toast. They all clinked glasses. Harold noticed the way Jake looked at Emma, with love and pride. In the past year, their relationship had grown serious. Harold liked Jake more and more as he got to know him. He was kind and supportive of Emma's work. As the evening went on, more paintings sold. By the end of the night, 9 of the 12 had red stickers beside them. Mr. Jenkins was thrilled, and so was Emma. After the last guests left, Emma, Jake, and Harold stood together in the empty gallery. "I wish Mom could have seen this," Emma said softly, looking at her paintings. "She would have been so proud of you," Harold said, "just as I am." Emma took Harold's hand and squeezed it. "I have both of you to thank for this. Mom gave me my talent and my determination, and you gave me the chance to use them." Harold's eyes filled with tears. From that first day at the trailer to this moment of triumph, the journey had been about more than just finding his granddaughter. It had been about finding himself, about learning what truly mattered in life. As they walked out of the gallery together, Harold knew that his greatest achievement wasn't the buildings he had built or the money he had made. It was standing beside his granddaughter on her special day, being part of her life and her success. Some treasures, he had learned, couldn't be measured in dollars. They could only be measured in love.